Namo Manju Shri Ye, Namo So Shri Ye, O Namo Shri Ye Soha, O Namo Manju Shri Ye, Namo So Shri Ye, Namo O Namo Shri Ye Soha. Pidang Zogi Chonang La Janchu Bandu Nani Gyab Zuchi, Tangi Chunye Kibe Chonang Ki, Chola Penche Sangye Choba Sho. Pidang Zogi Chonang La Janchu Bandu Nani Gyab Zuchi, Tangi Chunye Kibe Chonang Ki, Chola Penche Sangye Choba Sho. 觉当这个就拿了，将就把都拿的给手机，那个去年给别从那个找那边去上去做吧，说而且那个就是没多少，让你去你的给嘛的，上去新都没得，也状元那个是个去吧，说我说让他们到了干的呀，大呀，So please adjust your sitting posture according to the 7 meditative postures of Vairocana. Think, all sentient beings have been my mothers. And all sentient beings have been my mothers since beginningless time. They have been my mothers not just once, but for numberless times. All sentient beings are as kind as my mother in this life. Even though all kind mother sentient beings want happiness and do not want even a small suffering, due to engaging wrongly in objects of adoption and abandonment, they only experience suffering. In our minds, sincerely generate loving kindness towards all kind mother sentient beings, thinking, how nice it would be if all kind mother sentient beings were to have happiness and the causes of happiness, that is virtues. May all kind mother sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. I will cause all kind mother sentient beings to have happiness and the causes of happiness. Lama, please bless me to be able to do so. Next, we meditate on and next we cultivate compassion towards all suffering mother sentient beings, thinking, how nice it would be if the bodies of all mother sentient beings were free from the class discordant with accomplishing virtue, such as physical suffering, pain, sickness, and problem caused by 4 elements. May they be free from the discordant class. Or freedom from the discordant class. Lama, please bless me to be able to do so.
那些东西呢，是给他东西已经是这东西的，那都他让你，哦，这就到大街上都在心里面，那么那其实那都是那个情况。
How nice it would be if the minds of all suffering mother sentient beings were free from the class discordant with accomplishing virtue, such as mental suffering, fear, coarse and subtle negative discursive thoughts. May the minds of all suffering mother sentient beings be free from the discordant class. Our freedom from all discordant class. Lama, please bless me to be able to do so.
尤其是东西呢，就是嘛那个我跟金老师的嘛经验把差了，这个到大街上我都在心里面，那么那心里面都是那个经验。
How nice it would be if the speech of all suffering mother sentient beings were free from the class discordant with accomplishing virtue, such as telling lies and other subtle, coarse and subtle negative speech. May their speech be free from the discordant class. I will free their speech from the discordant class. Lama, please bless me to be able to do so.
네, 그래서 동아리는 이제 만드는 저 무슨 이 저, 근데 저 타는 거는 좀 나가지고 나가다가 저 도시는 거는 지리도 없어. 그래서 같이.
How nice it would be if the three doors of all suffering mother sentient beings were free from the class discordant with accomplishing virtue. May their three doors be free from all discordant class. I will free their three doors from the discordant class. Lama, please bless me to be able to do so.
어때 이제 동아리는 생각보다 탕진 동네도 좀 무료하다 잖아. 좀 더 지금 더 다가셔서 대신 만나면 신지도 벌써 무슨 생각하지?
How nice it would be if all sentient beings were free from all suffering and the causes of suffering that are non-virtues. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. Our freedom from suffering and the causes of suffering. Lama, please bless me to be able to do so.
就是我原是个这个是我的另外的这个可是呢，我年上了不就改变了，一样的我们上去恐怕为什么不是了一样的吧？上去了是个长期的上去恐怕现在不想，都是没法进行强制性关意思。
Next, we cultivate bodhicitta. First, we ask ourselves, who should take on the responsibilities to free all other sentient beings from the sufferings of samsara and lower realms? I should take on the responsibility to free all other sentient beings from the sufferings of samsara and lower realms. Even though I should take on the responsibility, I do not have the abilities to do so now. Who has such abilities? Only those who have achieved the perfectly complete enlightenment have the abilities to do so. Therefore, for the sake of all mother sentient beings, by all means, I will achieve the precious state of enlightenment.
对于就是在长期的上去恐怕的话，像那个在工作吧，等于那个那个对于这个我做的哪怕这个就非常非常，这个嘛这个东巴呢，他的在我觉得这个非常的强劲是吧？对这个对这个，我这个这个的哪怕这个就是他不是那话题，你们这个事情意思。
Next, we generate all-encompassing yoga mind, the aspiring conventional bodhicitta that thinks, for the sake of all mother sentient beings, I will achieve the state of enlightenment. These transform into a white moon dish at one's heart. Human bodhicitta, that is one's mind becoming in one taste with emptiness, the lack of inherent existence. These transform into a white five-pronged vajra on top of the moon dish.
就是到通过的让人记得在刚才我地方一直的动画音上面的进去。
Next, we meditate on emptiness for a short while, that I do not exist inherently one with or inherently different from the aggregates. Thus, I do not exist inherently.
并且到通过的让你记得这种恰当的对应的记得都是你所在的通过让你记得这个内容上或者有不进去的。
If I and aggregates were inherently one, then it would become an inseparable partless one.
到通过的让你条件的这种人们典型的都有，不人们典型的都有，也是在大部分人们典型的有上就是那个进去。
And if I were to exist inherently different from the aggregates, then they would become unrelatedly other. Thus, I do not exist inherently different from the aggregates.
第一就是我说，能去到把现在东西，我是你小娃肯定也在肯定少个人，就是而且这个能力现在就是个，他我们看到，我也是么，因为我是么东西，啊，然后就在那个地方看到，也上过是刚些个些手机都是别完之后，我的这定期的你啥把公司也不会觉得我一样，啊，已经发现你是你的事。
As I always say, it is very important to conjoin whatever roots of virtue that we perform through our three doors with the practice of six perfections. So to conjoin this session with the practice of six perfections, the first one is generosity. The nature of generosity is a mind of giving. So these 2 hours of listening, contemplating, and meditating on the Dharma is for the sake of purifying suffering and giving the happiness of all sentient beings. If we're able to cause these minds of giving to manifest, then this session, we will be able to conjoin this session with the practice of generosity.
第一就是自己说是共生吧，自己就我什么东西，啊，就是那个什么另外你今年把所有的嘛，就这个啥不就公司也不行，就都完了，那这种感觉没事没事。
Next is morality. The nature of morality is a mind of abandonment. I will properly abandon my physical and verbal negativities so that they do not manifest in these 2 hours of listening, contemplating, and meditating on the Dharma.
第二就是知道，啊，咱们这个是把随便我什么东西，就是那个，啊，你是来刚刚因为搞这种的，当到那个谁都不要不去全部呢，我台湾是一不是可能是如此。
Next is patience. The nature of patience is an undisturbed mind. During these 2 hours of listening, contemplating, and meditating on the Dharma, I will patiently accept any physical or mental hardships that occur.
第一就是针对说我是别忘了退什么，针对是我什么东西，其实那个年上过是结果了，被搞的主要不是解决呢，结果的主要结果的对方的年上过是解决针对什么呢？我在针对是发现的是有的是。
Next is joyous effort. The nature of joyous effort is a mind that takes delight in virtue. I will happily and enthusiastically engage in the virtue of listening, contemplating, and meditating on the Dharma.
第一就是上帝是我的身体和讲了最基本的把的上帝是我什么东西，当然是就这女人啊，那么多的那样我就帮忙着，去小娃了什么地方我都忙着，但是你上公司去谁的，你小娃的了吧，自己的那地方呢，我在上帝是不行的是的是。
Next is concentration. The nature of concentration is a mind that single-pointedly focuses on any virtuous object. During these 2 hours of listening, contemplating, and meditating on the Dharma, I will single-pointedly focus my mind on the virtuous object without being controlled by the discursive thoughts, distractions such as my family matters.
뒤에 이제 간다. 시험시험에서 간다. 그래서 넘기지는 거를 그래도 무슨 뭐 것이 한 주제에 내상 보수 지금 치다 될 감비지나 봐. 저희 시주 만나 봐야 보지 시도 가지 중간이나 이제는 관심이 안 있어요. 그래서
And wisdom. The nature of wisdom is a knower that thoroughly distinguishes phenomena. I will unmistakably and properly understand the words and the teachings of the Dharma that I listen to, contemplate, and meditate on.
이제 노지야 그래서 이제 상주적인 상주적 공부하고 민체도 다 간다 전부 나한테는 무슨 근데 너네 전부 생각을 해봐 보니 사토스 그나 어디서
Set a good motivation. For the sake of all mother sentient beings, I will achieve the state of enlightenment. For this purpose, I will listen to the commentary on the Lam Rim teachings, practice accordingly, in order to benefit sentient beings.
뭐야? 대기요. 나도 내 맞춰 드리는 배송만 해가지고 부모를 대신이 거다. 나 지금 근데 너도 뒤에만 지내 뭐 부모를 대신이 근데 나 지금 안 친다 이런 말. 그래서 나 지금 그래 뭐
So to continue where we talk how's it so to continue what we talked about in previous class that the I do not exist as inherently different from the aggregates.
当唱嘛，根据今年写的大的这个给他们进到是吧？他彭书记村里有时候啊，说的边上去他的旅游呢，要讲的，给他的人他的给他要把经济不的，人家得要嘛，也是他讲的，得要嘛的。你要是那边呢，如果是他的没有把东西，因为他的有把东西，你是不会的事。你如果是这一点点，已经把要嘛的事，是吧？大概也要嘛的事。
So he says, moreover, if it existed as inherently different from the characteristics of the aggregates, suitability as form and so forth, it would have to be observed as such, just as, for instance, form and mind are observed as different. Since there is no such apprehension, though, the self doesn't exist as something factually other. So in other words, is the self does not exist as something other than the aggregates. So if the self exists as inherently different from the aggregates, then it would have to be observed as such, but there is no such apprehension.
그게 부모서는 관대랑 이타대 보면 이런 것이 가를 좀 그래서는 다 자와처럼 공부를 자와처럼 어디 더더더 뭐만 주고야 분지치는 더 많이 시험도
Rinche Rinpoche quoted the root text on wisdom and also text composed by Glorious Chandrakirti to show the source of scriptural sources.
더 자와처럼 가던 공부를 풍지에 가서는 다한테는 간다 니원이 풍고를 다 무엇이도 두바 제가 그 말이 내가데 다한테 풍고나래 무엇이도 두바 때바이나 내내지 풍고해봐 다한테 또 수도 여가지고 그랬어 이거에 예수도 연구해서 내내지 풍고해봐 다한테 일로 수도 가지 이 연말에서 다한테 사실 물을 풍지에 대해서 아무
So Rinpoche first quoted the root text on wisdom. It says, it is illogical for the self to be other than the appropriated aggregates. So meaning, the self do not exist as something other than the appropriated aggregates. So if it were other, so if the self were other than the appropriated aggregates, then you could apprehend it in their absence. So without the appropriated aggregates, you could apprehend the self. However, you cannot, or there is no such apprehension.
대가랑 어디 빠데 다다가 보면 이거 뭐야 이런 거지 간다 이제 오다 될 때 간다 풍세를 와 그들이 그거를 아주 예 더더서 대화를 나 풍부는 되게지 다 지금 말에 얘네들 다 얘네들 같나 아주 풍부란 말이 다 지사와니 그래서 다들와 대시 풍부되게 난 풍부가도 되지 말듯이 다들 어디 다도 이들이 그게 되지 그 집어가 다기
And similarly, Jeremiah quoted Glorious Chandakirti entering the middle way. It says, thus there is no self other than the aggregates. So, and for besides those, apprehending it is not established. So meaning apprehending, there is no such apprehensions of a self apart from the aggregates. So that's why it says, besides those. So besides those refer to the aggregates, then apprehending the self is not established. And it says, you should train in order to gain the firm certainty that sees that such reasoning damage the position that a self exists as a different nature from the aggregates. This is because if you have not induced pure certainty with respect to the two sides of sameness and difference, so the two sides of sameness and difference refer to the inherently one and inherently different. So the conclusion that persons do not inherently exist will be a mere thesis, and you will not gain the pure view. So in order to realize emptiness, then one must understand well the damage to the positions or the contradictions to the positions that aggregates and the self were inherently one, and the aggregates and the self are inherently different. So you must see the contradictions in those positions. So if you understand the contradictions or the damage to those two positions, then you will be able to develop a pure view of emptiness. So if not, then even though you may say that a person do not exist inherently, or the selflessness of a person is selfless of inherent existence, then your conclusion or your determinations will be just a mere thesis, and one has not understood the pure view of emptiness yet.
근데 단자와 이제 나랑 이 두기 동안 또 두고시나 여기서 또 두고 말해서 두고 말해 나랑 이제 두고 말해서 저도 캐네 단자와 이제 단자와 이 그러나 라기 마도 베간다 심바지 라기 타데도 마도 베간다 심바지 지도 두스는 뮤직 가르도 라기 타데도 뮤직 가르도 약고 하 법이 더니 감시 마도 봤다 나와지 야가 버리 지도 그래서 데리다 어디
Dar kasati namja yole te ni ti da rangshing itu matu be tongwa
또 봐라. 그러니까 지금 많이 있어. 이 남자도 또 그거 말이야. 그러니까 국자와서 마치 사람이 그게 이 세상에서 단자와 편해봐 마치 나라니 진짜 누가 내셔 가는 누가 내셔 가는 내 수비들을 이제 밖에 또 나라니 뭐 무슨 단자와 나시 따와야 보니 시험을 해서 어디 단자와 나시 시험을 해서 제가 단자와 다시 시험 말이 해서 따와 시험 말이 해서 단자서는 무슨 개념 무슨 거 그거 개념
So up to this point, here are the important points that mentioned in the four essential points. So to this point are the four essential points. So in general, we do accept or we do state the positions that self and the aggregates do not exist inherently. So they do not exist inherently one, or they do not, and also they do not exist inherently different as well. So however, just having these just stating these positions or having uh, merely having merely stating these positions is not enough. Then we must we must understand the contradictions or damage to the positions that if self and the aggregates were inherently one, and position that if the self and the aggregates were inherently different. So we must understand this well in order to realize the emptiness of self and the aggregates. Emptiness of self and aggregates as a distinct as inherently one or inherently different. So we must understand this. If not, just having this thesis or just merely stating this position will not enables you to realize the inherentness or the emptiness of the self or selflessness of self. So you have to analyze it with reasoning. Then you do a proper analysis with the reasonings. Then one will be able to understand as the positions that you state or that as the thesis that you mentioned.
어떻게 어떻게라 니바들가 니바가 와서 다른 이게 두고 거기 누가 뒤에 다고 이게 두고 시 투를 해서 니바들 식으로 와 다른 이게 두고 이거 누가 될라는데 다고 하는 이게 두고 계속 니바들 식으로 와 그들만 너도 들이 좀 해서
So the determining that mind does not exist inherently. So here it talked about through the reasoning that negates the inherent existence of self, also negates the inherent existence of mind.
어디 거기서 나가서 다들 라기 주 생각하면 야 저같이 다들 라기 주니 그 말도 제같이 라기 주 뭐지 라기 지다 나는 거기다 두고 살이 비하고 심하지 좋아 내가 뭐 쉬어도 다다 라기 주 말도 라기 주 지다 되게 다 지다 되게 거기 두고 저같이 다 지다 되게 거기야 두고 사 되게 다라 라기 그가 캐는 이제 가게 그거를 뭐 하고 오는데 나라기 그거를 치는 나라기 좀 봐. 나라기 좀 봐. 근데 나라기 좀 봐. 대체나 이 코로나 되게 그거 다고라니 두고 니그래 다고라니 두고 니그래서 이거 그래서 대체나 다고라니 두고 우리 두고 니그래서 니야 그거 말했어. 대니야 내비 존세 가지나 다고라니 두고 그러 내 차디 뭐셔지고 맨날 뭐셔 같은 이들 나와라서 가만히 있어. 과연 말로 뭐셔지고 마하나 뭐셔지 거기 니가 나와다 와라서 통화해서 이거 와서 되는 것이 했어. 되는 것이 와.
They can do the ni ma wa ji da. They jibo they say they gonna ni ju de ji ba de da ge wa. Da ge wa. Da de ni ma wa.
이 두번에 이거 말해서 다 된다.
Da ge wa de da ji wa.
나라니 두번에 맞고 대세 나라니 두번에 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 거기서 거야 기억만 내야 기억만 이게
That's all. So when you have thus sought with reasoning whether the self is or is not exist, so is or is not inherently established. So another way of saying this is, so when you search whether the self exists inherently or not with the reasoning, then when you determine that the self doesn't exist as inherently one with the aggregates, nor does it exist inherently different from the aggregates, then you negate the inherent existence of the self. So by failing to by failing to find it to be either one or many, so this is why you negate it. You negate the inherent existence of the self. So how do you negate? You by failing to find it to be either one or many. And at that point, through the reasoning that analyzes suchness, you will not find an inherent established mind. Just as when you do not observe a barren woman's son, you do not observe his mind, such as his eyes. So if a parent's woman's son is not observed, then similarly, his mind. So what his mind refers to what belongs to him. So his mind is not such as his eyes is not observed in.
맞들만 간다 대제를 못 공지요 싸워지를 보면 지우래 와 간다 된다 간다 다랑이지 맞다 다랑이지 맞다 이게 다랑이지 되게 간다 맞다 와 근데 하 거네 근데 하고 되게 또다 다랑이지 맞다 뭐 뉴그레 또 그거 다들 뭐 발레 좋아 예 뉴그레 해서 그래 안다와 예 뉴그레 다랑이지 맞다 또 봐이나야 뭐 다고 아니지 그냥 개요 말 다고 아니 그거 말했어 다고 아니 그거 다고 아니 그거 이것은 내리 그거 잖아 그래서 와 뭐셔지 뭐 다다 다고 와서 그거 다고 아니지 뭐 맞고지 다고 아니 그거 그거 말했어 요 말인데 요 말했어 그게 되지 않다 다고 아니지 예 나도 어디 다고 아니 그거 다 이었어 배샤와이나 뭐셔지 뭐 아니지 뭐 뭐야 매저디 뭐셔지 거기 나빠서 나이 나빠 나이 công 다데 하고 와서 난 술 마셔 줘와 어디 뭐셔지 거기로 매저디 거기 나빠서 công 더 많이 와서 그나시 바로 아니지 좀 매저디 아빠이 이 뭐가 가와이 봤어 이거 말해서 근데 그래서
So this paragraph talks about if you understand well the person do not exist inherently, then one will be able to understand the mind also do not exist inherently. So if the mind were to exist inherently, then if the mind were to exist inherently, then Hiromachi quoted the root text on wisdom says that if the I does not exist, how possibly could mind exist? So if the I do not exist, how could what belongs to the I, which is with the word mind? So how could what belongs to the I exist? Then just like the example, a barren woman's son. So if the son of a barren woman doesn't exist, then how could his mind, such as his eyes, his hands, his legs, be observed?
그다 제가 지버리스 와서 다 되어도 중복만 배려로 다 되어도 수지도 수지도 이지도 다도 수지 봐 와서 수지 공부도 다 가야 가자 지금 다데 그런 라기지 모두 봐 거기서디 라기지 모두 다 되게 공부돼 다 하고시 와 다데 수지 공부돼 라기지 두 가지 가야스 다 그런 라기지 모두 자리 거기 공부다 나빠다 그거 진짜 그거 줘야 가야스
So we say that I depends on the aggregates, right? So if I depends on the aggregates, and if I doesn't exist, then how could the mind, such as his body, his hands, his legs, and etc., be exist inherently? So if I doesn't exist inherently, how could his mind, his hands, his body, his legs, and etc., be inherently exist?
다들 지르버지 공지를 저지르마 그 다랑이 지르고 많이 옆바 많이 당여가 가는 데가 되는 다랑이 지 옆바 많이나 다랑이 그런 옆바에 가야 해서 가라 해서 이 대단히 수고 네 지르버지 다 자기들이 통보다 와 다랑이 지 봐 배차지 나와 정말 무슨 들고 무슨 말이야 이거 그지 뭐 하고 그지 공부다 그냥 나보다 뭐 내보시나 야 이거 좋아 이거 그거 그거 봐라 무슨 말이야 이거 내가 와 이랬어요 이거 알았어 딱 간다
Jeremiah quoted Nagarjuna's The Root Text on Wisdom says, if the I does not exist, how possibly could mind exist? Kutia Rinpoche quoted this text to support the point. So if I doesn't exist, then how could mind? So mind, if you want to, to understand it in an easy way, is you just link this mind or understand this mind as the form our body. So if I doesn't exist, possibly how possibly could the body of the mind, such as body, exist?
오, 되지로. 다들만 제일 가서다 양자와 소문 집어. 어디 다들 뭐 function 정원이야. 다 오만 집어 되시오디. 다 오만 집어 돼. 이제 보면 이제 다 봐야 되는데 완전히 망가서 빼자는 식으로 되는 관리자들아 이제 가시다 셰법은 장기 소리 자 고바 소리다 자기 뮤지 소리와 오 셰법은 장기데 장기 매봐라 릴샤와 저 뭐야 가와이 됐어 와 네, 막 가와이 됐어 이 장기데 매봐이나 그때 소야 그죠 공부하다 그래서 가와이 됐어 이거 말와 어디나시 했어 다들 나게 주가 매사디 와 그때 나와서 와 이거 다 된다 되시오 와
And entering the middle way says, since no actions exist without an agent. So this is, it shows, the first line talks about the example. So without an agent, so agent such as a pot maker. So if there is no pot maker, how possibly could pot exist? So if there is no pot maker, how possibly could exist? So then the second line talks about its actual meaning. So there is no mind without a self. So if the self doesn't exist, then how could mind exist?
다들 가서 빼셔야 되고 다다 다원이를 봐 야시군다 아주로와 장기 셰법을 되게 다들 쓰자 그 리스샤와 자부시와다 나도 뭐 하자 빼를 대도 봐야 와 맞아 그 장기 오바 장기의 면사디 그 대시를 본바데 가와 이거서 다 단다데 대시를 본바데 가와 이거서 와 다대가 나시 정말 자세도 가서 다 원네 와
So the first two lines talks about the example and the actual meaning. So the first line, the example, agent, and the actions. So the agent, and the agent then with the example of a pot maker, and then the actions is the actions of making the pot and the product of it, so which is the pot. And then there is no mind and without the self. So agent is the example that illustrates the self, and actions of making a pot or the product pot, then it is the example that illustrates the actual meaning of mind.
That is just woman to go to anybody. You are without no one that anybody that is sure. You can't see for money and that did which much village. And that Roa sit down when it that one but on each of your mass is sure that one in Russia. That's your money. That one. And there was a that the war on each to back. Umba that one thing. That you 그거 maybe 나중에 또 따와 미리 하나는 좀 나쁘거든요. 그래서 오늘 나한테 좋아하는 그래서 내려가지고 와 내려가게 되네. 내려가게 나다 나와 어디 주도 이 차가운 봐서 봐. 그래서 오늘 좋아하는 그래서 내려가 좋아하는 그래서 이게
So this verse is very important, and the first two lines it talks about the self. The self doesn't exist, therefore the mind also doesn't exist. With the example of the actions of product and also the word agent. So these two, then therefore by seeing, then the third line it says, therefore by seeing the I and mind as empty. So by seeing the I and the mind as empty of inherent existence, then the yogi abandons the afflictions of attachment, anger, and ignorance. Then the yogi is completely liberated from samsara.
어디 오랜만에 리포트 가서 쉬우다. tanda riba de shu kozara dada dawa na jang ji ma ta ko riba de la tini ta mo so la sa de tholo pre de ni ma riba wol sa ma ja ta ra ji jing ngao na bi ta ni ba de wa ra ji jing ngao na bi de ni ji de wa ta mo za de rang wo ni ma tu ba tu na de shi ba ji na da wa ra ji jing wa da mo za wa mo da ka za ka li da ka zi ka li na de ra ji ma tu ba tu ta riba de ge ta wa ne se ji shi ba ji de ka za de然后看去安切的，那大个世界的上面就看的呢，车嘛让你去，我记得我看的，哎呀，我马上啊，物理也是他在那里，我记得的呢，那个车嘛看的，这个是你物理现在也是我，是吧？啊，我给说打我啊，让这个，然后打我让你去，嘛我日本你了对呢，你到不先把了对呢，那个实际你生件多日就干。누가 그가 간다 이래다 주 관리나 참만 받자 좀 그래서 와 이래다 주 참아 봐 따다 리바 때라 때네 많이 좀 하다가 와다 누구 해서 우리 뭐도 보리 해서
Thus, those reasonings determine that the I of your own apprehending mind stream, thinking I or self or person does not exist by way of its intrinsic nature. So the reasoning that determines that I or self or person does not exist inherently or does not exist intrinsically. So with the same reason, then you should also realize the entire meaning of the suchness that is the substances of persons, that all persons from hell, beings to Buddhas, and all their mind are not inherently established as the same nature or a different nature from their basis of destination, their contaminated or uncontaminated aggregates. So through those reasoning, you should also understand you should also know how all their mind is likewise established as lacking inherent existence. So with the reasoning that realizes the self and the mind as non-inherent existence, with the same reasoning, one will be able to realize that six migrating beings. So what it says here is from hell beings to Buddhas. So from the six migrating beings and also the world, the whole world, and basically the world and the inhabitants are also empty of inherent existence. So that reasoning itself, uh, uh, with that reasoning itself, one can also realize the lack of inherent existence of the world and the inhabitants.
我到底个写话，这个习近平的去刚上的大这个在网易云的话就他国在都行，反正呢参嘛了，那说习对吧？马上今天嘛是干啥参嘛几把几家查的是吧？干啥参嘛干呀？没事在的几把几家查的是吧？习不全新的我的东西的话，他全新的把你们解决是吧？让你嘛这个哈国在的，大的让你对吧的，而且哈国在的吧？没事在的。那没事在的，你哪种你嘛都在的都行啊，这个，对，去了对吧？完了呢，参嘛呗，哪是我去，晓得的。那去里面就是这个点的，现在公告了呗，然后都老子连他我也是，这个点多在的，那现在他们连他我说的也是，然后现在都要别人跟你结巴东西，就是往后上班的跟你结巴东西，你现在肯定也不是。现在的商量当然在连他不懂也是。
So first, if we understand well that the self or the I or person does not exist inherently, then that is one basis, right? The person or I or self. So that is one basis. So if you understand that the self doesn't exist inherently by negating its objects of negations, which is the inherent existence of the I, then it will be easier for you to realize the non-inherent existence of other phenomena. So other phenomena such as the six migratory beings and also the world that I mentioned just now. So if you understand the non-inherent existence on one basis, for example, the self, then it will be easier for you to realize the non-inherent existence of other phenomena. So other phenomena, in other words, is the basis of quality. So it will be easy for you to realize the emptiness or non-inherent existence of other basis of quality. So in terms of the object of negations, it's the same, the inherent existence. So the difference is, the only difference is the basis of quality. That there are many, and you can change to other bases of quality, such as the fellow beings, such as a Buddha, such as the world, and etc. So at first, it takes it takes great effort. You need many reasoning to realize the selflessness of person. Once you realize it by negating its negations, then it will be easy for you to realize the emptiness based on other basis, based on the other basis of quality. 이다 종교에 있나디? 기회 용대나. 기회 용. 기회 용상. So then we come to next outline, showing how persons appear like an illusion in dependence on that. This has 2 points, the meaning of the expression like an illusion and the method through which things appear like an illusion. The meaning of the expressions like an illusion, again, it has 2 points, the unmistaken manner of appearing like an illusion and the fallacious manner of appearing like an illusion. And the unmistaken manner of appearing like an illusion, Jeremiah quoted the King of Concentration Sutra, it says, meditate on signs as empty of nature, like a mirage, a Gandhava city, like an illusion or a dream. Know all phenomena to be like that. The mother of the victors also teaches that all phenomena from form through omniscience are like illusions and dreams. So, so basically it says that it doesn't exist as it appears. So it basically talks about this concept. It doesn't exist as it appears. So, like a mirage. So mirage exists, but it doesn't exist as it appears. So mirage, like due to the conditions of hot sand, sunlight, and then it appears as there is a water over there. Then and this water, though it appears as a water, but there is no water there. So mirage doesn't like the mirage, like the water of a mirage, that doesn't exist as it appears. And a Gandhava city, so Gandhava also means in English is a smell eater. So basically it refers to the hungry ghost. So a Gandhava city, it manifests, but it doesn't exist. So it appears, but it doesn't exist. So similar to illusions and dream.
나와 지마다 니레고 와 나와 지마다 니레고 다 지마다 지마다 버서 되니 좋아
So there are two meanings of being like illusion described in this way. First, there are things like ultimate truth, which is said to be illusion-like, and although it is established as merely existent, its true existence is understood to be negated. And the second, there are things like the illusion-like appearance of that which appears while being empty. So basically, there are two. One is the ultimate, like an illusion, and the appearance, like an illusion.
다 내가 내가 지마다 버서 나와 지마다 니 이제 쇼로와 나와 지마다 버서 다 내가 지마다 버서 소아세와데 그 템바 주바 파선 게 쇼로와 내가 지마 다버들 간다 템바 주바 까바잖아 템바 주바 케바잖아 케바 셰발라 내가 지마 하세 이게 쇼 템바 주바 케바 템바 주바 케바다 템바 주바 까바잖아 템바 주바 까오디 템바 주바 와 템바 주바 그 템바 지마다 나데와 데버트가 까다데 데버트가 통에 된다지마 이마다 데버트가 통 데버트가 통과 이마다 그래서 된다지마 스티리
So the first one, there are things like ultimate truth. So, so here basically it says that by negating the true existence, then it is empty of true existence. So one established that it is empty of true existence. So since it is empty of true existence, the ultimate truth appear like an illusion.
어디 다만 저기 간다 까도지 간다데 좀 마카르시오스나 나와 주마다 거기 디시 다간다 그래서 소 나와 주마 와 나와 주마다 하나서 나와 주마다 디 된다데 신오디 된다 주마다 좀 된다 두루 와 나와 주마다 신오디 최근에 나와 주마다 시대데 된다 주마다 되는 상황이 됐어 되는 상황이 됐어
So here it mainly refers to the second one. So there are things like the illusion-like appearance of that which appears while being empty. So this is what it mainly refers to. So, however, if you understand the second one, the appearance like an illusion, then implicitly one also understand the first modes of appearance, which is the ultimate truth appear like an illusion.
필마 간다 막 담도 그것도 막 일어나 나와 돼야 돼 말이 그 나와 주마다 보세요데 다 거야 나와 나와 주마다 시발라 다 나와다 지금 상관이 그래서 주기미 상황이 뭐 나와다 돼야 돼 말이 다 나와다 돼야 돼 상관이 무슨 그래 이 차비 돈에 오늘 제가 주마다 보고서 그때 주마다 보고 주마다 보고 봐라 인생인 상을 그래서 와 인상과도 딱 간다 밀마 세고 젤마 와 인상 해야 돼
예, 당보 대나와 당이바 대동이요.
봐 이거 대박 되나 되네 최강조 나와다 예
나와나 시요.
나와다 되는 걸 되다 애니라 때네 최강조 주마다 시바디 어때 얼마 전에 봐
So in order to understand that appearance are like illusion, then we need two, combinations of two. So these two refers to the appearance of the object, and the second one is the ascertainment that realizes the non-existence as its appearance. So the first one is appearance. The first factor that we need is the appearance of the object, and the second one is ascertain that it is empty of anything as it appears.
다들 주마다 보세요. 모두 디나시 말해서 나 정우라다 모자지 뭐 나와나시 내가 때문에 말해마도 주마다 되는 도와줘요 말. 최단지 주마다도 또 세워야 하니 여바지 또 온다. 최단지 주마다도 또 세워야 장비지 준비. 나와나시 되나 매비 타니 여바지 또 와. 최단지 주마다도 또 세워야 나서 또 아니면 매바다 말이죠. 또 아니면 말이죠. 저 정우지 자다 모자지 무슨 하다 나지. 내가 또 어디 没把这个道理啊，那些马来西亚是吧？你得容得的，得东西，我等多些，你这个重要嘛，容得的，某些就不是吧？我第一点呢，我说这个，把你多些，你给要买，
其實 now 我成日啲人如果話接保咗咯，
他那我这个要
人哋咩唔知，對面買買，對面買，
这边没事，
如果話接保咗，
我心里没事。
yeah. So in order, the share na gis lang so ipecha. That's So to understand that appearance are like illusion, then as I mentioned just now, we need two factors. We need two factors. The first one is the appearance, right? So the appearance, it doesn't refer to such appearances like a parent's woman's son, which is a non-existence. So though it appears, but it is a totally non-existent, it is totally non-existent. So it doesn't refer to such appearances. It refers to appearances of an existent phenomena. So all phenomena that exist. So to realize that all phenomena are like illusion, then we need the object that we need is an existent object, not a totally non-existent thing.
我不要大家的容易是吧？某些人本来关系，那关系，那关系，因为东方比较多嘛，对，做了看到起码等他给要马来西亚的话，这个起码等他这个马来西亚，这起码等下次刚才，起码等你别等的话，你写真的，他起码能够等待嘛，是吧？你别等他是到了嘛，但是企业是吧？
So for this, both its appearance and its emptiness of truly existing in the way it appears are necessary. So we need these two, the combination of these two. So if an object seems utterly non-existent, even as a mere appearance like the fawn, a rabbit, or the son of a barren woman, and does not arise as appearing yet empty of existing in the way it appears, then you have not understood the meaning of being an illusion-like appearance. So even though you may understand that, or the mere appearance such as fawn of a rabbit or parents of the son of a barren woman that does not exist or appears like an illusion. However, even though if you realize that, it doesn't help you to realize that things appear like an illusion. So things refers to the existent thing. So existent phenomena appears yet empty of existing as it appears. So you do not realize it yet.
当我是什么，那我怎么到他太等你讲的他，你别说，我，所以我是知道人嘛是做不的嘛做，那么想能看到的，也都怎么到不是，他等到的，你都定了了，他哦，那么想能看到的，也都怎么到不是，你其实是等到的定了哇，因为他的我是看到嘛的需要一个什么，那我怎么到其实，他那我怎么到接触干你们，他对吧？我的需要一个，
那可以。
那我怎么做？对吧？特别像我们这边呢，很多啊，那边习惯的边呢，边必须很多啊。那这么那我怎么的？
习惯对了，习惯
这么有的。
So regarding this in the future, then if got time, then I will talk about the illusion-like meditative equipoise. The space-like meditative equipoise and illusion-like subsequent attainment. So this I will talk about it later.
那我怎么的？其实我都工作把这些修是吧？工作比怎么的不？这些修。那我怎么的？其实工作和怎么的不？但是说老实话，长嘛看的，是说工作老实话，这看的他讲的，那我怎么的？确实得这些修是吧？那我怎么的？
Tsongkhapa ina di shiba di sungyu na ina.
Shiba ni mo la, shiba ni mo te pe na juma da, juma tu ta te tanga na shi ya.
You may be dang da wa di na.
Oh, te pe juma da ta te to to tanga sma ta ba le. Ah, ni. Ta chama la ya de no juma de ta kanda. Ni pe da wa. Ni pe da wa ma shi wo. Ta jimi pe da wa. Sma kunzo ba. Kunzo ma jimi pe da ta ma shi wo. Kunzo be juma pe da wa. Sma kunzo be juma na wa.
Shima kunzo be.
That I juma no finish ba. No juma da no te da. No juma da was it. Juma da was ma shi wo. 那주마 잡을 때 와서 가서 군도에 주마 누구 되게 쉬워. 와 군도가 주마 누구 되게 좀 쉬워. 나도 마셔. 군도에 주마 누구 쉬워디 주마 그 되어 쉬마. 대자상 되게 마셔. 배에서 마다 쉬워.
Yeah, so as I mentioned just now, there are two illusion like one is the ultimate truth appears like an illusion, and the second one is the appearance that the appearance like an illusion. So the appearance like an illusion is the one that mainly that mainly refers to in this context. The appearance like an illusion. So the appearance like an illusion, meaning that the conventionality appears like an illusion. Then here we would talks about the example.
그러면서 주마다고 진짜 빼셔야 되는 것도 주마케요라 주마케. 주마케가 하고 좋아. 주마케도 저기 그 대우라서 봐서 따라서正路 와. 따라서 봐 쭉. 따라서 봐 쭉이잖아. 주미 따라데 따라 무슨 나이. 차 무슨 나와 다 미기. 뭐 저거 미기 해봐 무슨 동거. 미기 해봐 동거로 와. 대우시 따라서 봐 쭉쭉이. 되게 쭉쭉 쭉에. 대우시 따라서 따라데 미기 해봐 때문에 미기 해봐 동거로. 미기 해봐가 동을 와. 미기 해봐가 동을 예. 우리 따라 남고요 했다. 우리 따라 나와 남게 때문에 남게 와. 지금 따라 남고요 했어. 따라 나와. 근데 따라도 나와 나시. 다 매번 쓰는 게 무슨 이지 해봐지. 다 나와 나시 매번 인기스나 이지 해봐. 맞아 주미게. 하지 말래비. 시래비 다 때문에 지거를 보자. 와. 근데 통계대 주미게 주마게 하지 시해야 와.这个你不给别人大浪空调的话，那是空调的，那是通过的，看的。我同学，我做某些国家的，我没那个时候在店里帮买的过，有的是吧？有的店同学，你是个同学，这同学的呢，他得那我哪些啊？这个工作呗，那我你个这个怎么的不？我对你写过来是写当不得的，这东西当了这边东西，你是当了的当了。对吧？那那那些没把的水你的是呢，他一起把的，一起把的，那那些没把没把，那咱们背的的，那那些没把的水你的是呢，一起把的，没把，我当不得了的。
So hence you should understand other phenomena as resembling an illusion like this. Illusions conjured by a magician are from the start empty of being horses, elephants, and yet their appearances as horses and elephants undeniably arise. This is the example. So a magician then uses pebbles and sticks and etc. and then conjured a horse and elephants out of it. So even though it is from the start empty of being horses and elephants, however, the audience, so their eye consciousness see it as an elephant and see it as horses. So however, and it doesn't exist as it appears. So the horse and elephant doesn't exist as it appears, and these can only be ascertained by the mental consciousness.
对的，那讲的别，没细节的话，没细节，当往通啊，没细节当往通啊，没细节当往的，没把，点你了点你的话，点你了点你是啥子？你从是别的，没细节当往通啊的，你去写把个当的没把，点你了点你，点你了就没给当往的，就没给当往的，是吧？当的马住吧。当然，那我的马主吧，你要是那金币，就嘛金币当然，他就嘛金币当晚上没事吧，就嘛金币当晚上没想到，你那天的当然的，当晚上没把你那天当然的情况嘛，因为他好多也是被提醒多了，当然是被提醒的话，是吧？你现在那往同样的，当晚的没把。你那天呢？你那天呢？他居民当然的，当然的话，当然是马主吧，你嘛真的，就嘛他们公司还好弄是吧？这个人，我这是吧？就嘛的真嘛有好，这是，那得背电脑系统，那得背的话，背。
So as I mentioned just now, in order to understand the illusion light, then we need two factors. The first one is the appearance, and the second one is emptiness of emptiness emptiness of existing as it appears. So with the example that I meant from the text, it says the magicians and the illusory horses and elephants by using those by using those substances and etc. Then audiences they are how's it then the audience they sees the appearance of horse and elephants. So then this is the first factor. Audience sees the appearance of horse and elephants. This is the first one. Their eye consciousness see the appearance of horse and elephants. And the second one is their mental consciousness ascertain that it doesn't exist as it appears. So we need these two factors. So the audience, when they see the appearance of horse and elephant, and then with the mental consciousness that ascertain that there is no horse and elephants as it appears, even though it appears as being a horse and elephant. However, it doesn't exist as a horse and elephant. It is empty of being a horse and elephant. So just like this example.
等到是别了啊，然后等到是么别人家的，他讲是别人家的，他讲啥了嘛家的是吧？那讲啥了说吧？那讲啥了说吧？就是他那边写不的，讲啥了是他那边写不走那我的，看的让人就个闹，看的人就个闹是吧？讲啥是他那边写不走闹的，让人就个闹，别让人就个闹个的，闹啊哪些？他那继续就是不的啊，闹啊哪些主你都我都就不进去吧，这是写不的了是吧？ 那么这个是八点，我第一这把了点呢，那老是这把是把点清楚了点呢，把点呢马上点，马上我已经毛这个，就嘛这边弄啊，就嘛这边弄咱一把，现在我也是，是吧？咱得弄啊，弄啊哪些，弄啊哪些，对不对？把这个。 那我那些路到么都接不起的，你把地里那刚才的，那个那我那些没把说的，怎么啊？怎么弄？怎么样嘛？那我那些怎么样吧？这个年轻人了，也是看的，年轻人也是的，是吧？怎么这边弄在一把？他这里弄的怎么这边弄在一把？他也是他年轻，这个也是，有的底下的话，然后嘛就是。
So with the example that I mentioned just now, then we link it to the actual meaning is the persons appear to a conventional consciousness as existing inherently or exists intrinsically. So this is the first appearance, the first factor, the factor of appearance. And the second one is the reasoning that analyze whether a person exists as it appears or not. Then with these two factors, so these two factors, the reasoning that analyze refers to the reasoning consciousness. So with these two factors, a combination of these two factors, then one is able to ascertain that person do not exist as it appears, just like like an illusion. Person do not exist like as it appears, like an illusion. So I repeat. So with the example of the magician, horse, and etc., then the actual meaning that it linked to is person appears as inherent existent to a conventional consciousness. This is the first factor. And the second consciousness is the reasoning consciousness that analyze whether person exists as it appears or not. So based on the combinations of these two factors, then one is able to ascertain that person doesn't exist as it appears, like an illusion.
我在听你刚才这么多啊，是吧？刚才这么多，说完了，刚才的这么多，他全听起这么多，他等着几把的，全听起这么多，你多把了，他刚才俺说，你这你那上班的多不多啊？看你的落地了啊，看你的落地的，那去出的，地当，这个看你的那的，那个落地的， 상과지. 타니비 로 되게 나와나시 마두비 리시 때까지 로 되니라 때네 쳐다지 때간다 디바다 고 예스 가서 너 줄어서 봐 줄어서 봐 주마다 뭐야 돼 괜히 상우 그래서 괜히 지만 상바이나 그래서 간다와 괜히 내가 상우 그래서
Ini kan yi be lo la na wa dang, ne na wa dang shi ma du be shi xie ro, ju ju be chi ba xie.
어 이거 괜히라 때네 때네 쳐다지 주마다 미라다 뭐였어 그래서
Nang shi ma du ba, ne di mi lam ta bu de nang ta di.
쳐다지랑 이게 마두바 주마다고 미라다 버스 그래서
So in order to realize that person is like an illusion, and all phenomena are like illusion, then we need the two factors, combination of these two factors. The first one is the appearance through the conventional awareness, and then the second one is the reasoning consciousness that analyze whether the person or other phenomena exists as it appears or not. So with the combinations of these two, then one will be able to realize that the person and other phenomena do not exist inherently, and it is like an illusion.
我去当地的说了是吧？当到了这个去当地的，那么别那你当的让这个东华人，这东华你生的，给你问的，让你这个东华生的得当的，我给你把你的老跌当，给你这个这个的些不给你了，点的，看看是说你说他刚才去了什么，操，得当的，点不了，这个东华你妈的我。이마다고 또 예세 다 된다들이 맞아서 와 이렇게 빼도 되는 거 되는 거 그리고 또 유시 주마 유시 따라 그 받을 샤니 봐
최담시 되 기마다 보디 또.
샤니 주마다
음. 음. Yeah. So all phenomena, including person, they are empty, or they are empty of inherent existence from the start. So with the combinations of the two factors, the appearance to a conventional consciousness and the reasoning consciousness that analyze whether person, for example, exists as it appears or not. So with with the combinations of these two factors, one will be able to realize that person and other phenomena are like illusion.
그러나 또 지나 최단대로 이게 주마다고 또 해야 돼 가지고 남샤 나가다고 지도 주마다고 하시네 재미있는 얘기거래 그래서 이런 남샤 나가다고 들었다 간다 지나 가서야 이래서
담보에 대 최탐지에 대 규마다 보러
주마다고 와
최탐지에 대 규마다
그다음 최단대 주마다고 또 해라 방금 남샤 나가다고 또 그거 그래서 그 남샤 나가다고 지도 주마다고 해서 이니로 와다 대니는 최단대 주마다고 또 해라 그래서 남샤 나가다고 해서 뭐야 뭐 맞아 괜히 빼샤고 들어와 나샤는 갔다 보면 이거 좀 하다 보면 되게 시간이 쉬우지 맞아 나샤는 갔다 보셔야 돼 맞아 기타 들라 맞아 나샤는 갔다 보면 뭐다 야 나샤는 갔다 보면 이제 너 라반다고 미셔야 다 너무 dim 말로 와지와 당어서 딱 대고 거기서 나샤는 갔다 보셔야 돼딱 комп니가 세지도 넘버 샤네 와 동반의 지지의 넘버 샤네 앞에自己的东北领域是个多的，那么自己的啥，那么自己的啥呢？你那下搞的差的哇，那下提了初当解脱了上，解脱上我，那解脱是告诉，那下提你把它最少得怕麻药啊，解脱是告诉去干的是说了什么去干的人，那我呢，怎么能看对吧？怎么能是那我也是，哇，怎么能是差不多也是，哇，那下提你把它麻药吧，你把它自己的麻药啊。我这头是告诉别说个去干你头呢，这点不点不点，哪个嘛也是，你知道哪个嘛就嘛哪就哪个也是，就嘛到哪个也是我就是，那这头就嘛到，那么现在看到是的，我弟弟是的，这嘛这个这来说话。
So in order to realize that all phenomena are like illusion, then as I mentioned just now, the space-like meditative equipoise and illusion-like subsequent attainment. So in order to realize that all phenomena are like illusion, we need the first one, the space-like meditative equipoise. So space-like meditative equipoise refers to practitioner or a meditator who is in the meditative equipoise, single-pointedly focusing on emptiness. And then this meditator arises from the meditation and he enters into the subsequent attainment or post-meditation. So during the post-meditations, the force or the power of meditative equipoise um, uh, so the force of the meditative equipoise is not deteriorated yet. So during that time, all phenomena do not appear as fully existent. Instead, all phenomena will appear like an illusion. Yeah, so this is the space-like meditative equipoise. We need these because when a meditator in the meditative equipoise, who is in the meditative equipoise, single-pointedly focus on the emptiness, and when these meditators arises from the meditation, he enters into the subsequent attainment or the post-meditation. So in these post-meditations, while his power of meditative equipoise is not yet degenerated, then all phenomena here, all phenomena do not appear as truly existent, but rather all phenomena appear like an illusion. So then, likewise, phenomena such as persons are empty from the start and are from the start empty of inherent existence, of being established by way of their intrinsic natures on top of these objects, and yet it is undeniable that they appear as if established that way. So the first sentence talked about the example, and the second line talks about the actual meaning that he refers to, or that illustrates. Then, that being so, the appearances of as a god, a human, and so forth are portrayed as persons. So here it talks about all phenomena are empty of inherent existence. So even though all phenomena are empty of inherent existence, and some people might think that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence, does it mean that they are empty? They do not exist at all. So, and regarding this, then the doubts, also there are doubts thinking that it is a nihilistic emptiness, and then some think that such emptiness is a mentally fabricated emptiness. So the actual meaning here is, even though it is empty of inherent existence, but it doesn't mean that they are non-existent.
강사다 수자로서 최 간이 강사다 최 간이나 좀 진입이 되잖아 여마도 야 샤지지 레데 레 소바보라 소바다 따와다 니바 샤와라 소바 트사마 인데 인나게 탄디 템이 해서 이게 나 너무 너도 대마시오 소바 가야 소바 다시 이제 바디스 레고 최도 강사라서 받자 아니지 말다 매로고도 아니도 매로고도 내가 이나 아니 비가 여마서 매로고도 와서 매스나 내 소바보다 아 Nesse outro episódio, quando eu já que esse cara produz, mas tem mais, né, mas sempre tipo, вот. Но не типа дизайнер, не создавал, там не пошел на это. Ты не знаешь, что ты делаешь. Знаешь, ну я там сама типа, это читом 너무 말했어. 아니 그거 우리가 내가 참 제동 참 말했어. 제동도 들어와. 이거 맨날 내로 그랬어. 들어와. 참 말했어.
That being so, the appearances as a god, a human, and so forth are posited as persons. So, gods and human, they are persons, right? And an object that appears as form, sound, and so forth are posited as phenomena. So, So we talked about the substances, and substances can be divided into two, right? The substances of person and the substances of phenomena. So, phenomena is any phenomenon that is not person. They are grouped as phenomena. And then if it's a person, whether it's a human or whether it's a god, then they are grouped in the category of person. So yeah. Then therefore, although persons and phenomena have not even a particle of inherent existence established by way of their intrinsic characteristics, nevertheless, accumulators of karma and so forth, the actions of seeing and hearing and so forth, and all the interdependent actions and agents are valid. So here it says that some people might have doubt if persons and phenomena do not exist inherently. So not even an atom of inherent existence. Then some people think that, or if they do not exist inherently, means that they do not exist. If they do not exist, then it means that those creation of actions itself, and etc. are not valid, are not tenable. So these are the wrong, the misunderstanding of lack of inherent existence. So here is trying to say that lack of inherent existence or non-inherent existence doesn't mean that it is a nihilistic emptiness. It does not refer to a non-existent at all. It doesn't refer to such emptiness does not refers to nihilistic emptiness, meaning things do not exist at all.
들어와. 다 제동 매나서 들어와. 대상 들어와. 제동 말이지. 다 간다. 제동 말에 최나게 대만에서 빼. 그만에 빼. 간다. 최탄지 빼. 라디 빼 동바라. 동바. 레세 시부 여러 마도 나 나도 이 동바 레세 이 진짜게 배 말이지. 뭐 난도 게 동바에다 아서 세세게 배 말이지. 동만에 빼 라디 집에 동바디. 라디 집에 동바 레스. 여만 라디 집에 여만에 예, 내발라 내서 여가 이제 둘이 시험을 봐도 별로 난도게 내바치라 여서 여기지라 내려서 둘이 시험을 말해서 와다디마 그래서 시험과 네 시비 또 많이 있어. 시작 단지 안다. 미치 공막이 말해서 일단 들어가서 미치 또 말해서 오라.
So here it says, and since all actions and agents are valid, emptiness is not nihilistic. So emptiness of inherent existence is not nihilistic emptiness. And primarily, phenomena have always been empty like that and are understood merely as empty. And so it is not a mentally fabricated emptiness. So emptiness of inherent existence is not a mentally fabricated emptiness as well, because primarily, phenomena have always been empty. So it is empty of inherent existence just like that. So understanding it as it is doesn't make it a mentally fabricated emptiness.
시제 단지 대단되게 시제 단지 다지 대만에 동바스가 대가라 대단지 아직 주에 동아 대단 벽을 해마도 내지 동바스 니게 말이스 내지 동바스가 되나 준의 시기 주에 동아다 와 준의 시기 동아라고 저러와 네 지금 또 봐서 와
순인데 가리 이동.
순이 시기 좀 봐. 순이 시기 좀 봐로.
음.
뭐 순이 시기 좀 봐. 또 와서 순이 시기 좀 봐. 또 와서 지마도 최 당지를 차야지 엄마로. 최 당지를 차야지 엄마로. 네 지금 좀 봐. 다 쇼리 좀 봐자. 왜 좀 봐자 계속 와. 네 지금 좀 봐자 말이스 내가
순인 지신 이동 바디 또 바디. 근데 이제
좀
이동
봐자.
바디.
네 지금 봐. 네 지금 좀 봐. 말이스 그래서는 네 지금 봐. 깨지 그래서 이거 좋아. 그래서 된다고 지금 말해서 이제 또 맞아 말해 최 화제별로 한 몇만이라고 이제 동안 진짜 하루랑 이틀 동안을 쉬고 그런 말도 할로 수입받아 이제 쇼레 또 봐서 이 말해서 이제 또 봐서 쇼레 또 봐서 이제 쉬고 와 어때 샤워이나 존이 시기 또 봐서 되는 사람 해서
And since all objects of knowledge are asserted in this manner, so all objects of knowledge are asserted as empty of inherent existence. And primarily, they have always been empty like that, empty of inherent existence. So neither is it a limited emptiness. The example for a limited emptiness is the emptiness, reflection is empty of being a face. So it is an example for limited emptiness. So emptiness of inherent existence. So since all objects are empty, are asserted in this manner, all phenomena or all objects of knowledge are empty of inherent existence. So neither is it a limited emptiness like the empty of reflections empty of being a face.
된기 순간 다 들어버려. 다 간다 최단님이 지금 또 밖에 말이에요. 다 대공에서 다 간다 최단이랑 이또 동바 대공비 이 공바이나 동바 대공배도 된지 지금 이게 너무 상황이 때문에 뭐 그래서 좋아. 된지 바차다 제가 참을 거다. 우리 집에 동안 대공배도 이제 대화 단계 년보다는 내가 된지 바차다 제가 참아 이 광고리에서 광고리에서 내가 그게 나서 레몬이바 나서 레몬이바 이쪽에 도치면 봐 이게 말해 이게 동바 말해서 어디 집에 동화서다 그러니까 뭐야 내가 이쯤에 이 내가 동바 집에서 시부요 말 그래서 와 지금만 동바 시부요 말해 그래서 랑 디즈니나다 나서 내가 이어서 나서 랑디지 와 랑디지나 또 스스로 있대가 어디 집에 동화인데 뭐니 내가 당지 과자도 좀 뭐야 여봐 어디 이거 여봐 지금 그때 내가 말해서 다 된다 데리고 와
Nguma shema kapti, ngun the tenzing ngun shin se the then to
그래서 신이 보고 들어와 이게 뭐 들어와 바다 뭐 섬어 있는 것도 그래서
ngun shin se and the chana mong zu ro, the jing jing lo.
신이 들어
Yeah. So that is why when it is meditated on, so when it is meditated on, it refers to emptiness of inherent existence, then it becomes the antidote to all attachment. So attachment here, other word for this is manifest adherence. So manifest adherence refers, including attachment, anger, ignorance. So basically all mistaken thoughts. So associated with the apprehensions of true existence. So this meditation on the meditation on the emptiness of inherent existence becomes the antidote to all mistaken thoughts associated with the true grasping or the apprehensions of true existence. So emptiness of inherent existence doesn't mean that it is nothingness. It is nothing at all. It doesn't exist at all. That there is nothing to be realized. That there is nothing to be known or understood. So it doesn't refer to such nothingness. So because at the time of the path, then it can be practiced, it can be realized, and etc.
그러면 이제 그거들이 저기 좋아 다 눈이 가면 너무 똥방에 받아서 봐 아니 봐 뭐가 다가 이때 눈이랑 똥방에 똥이 다 당이 집에 똥한테 똥을 고 누사도 똑같이 이제 좋아 다 똑같죠 뭐야 아 제가 좀 세보소 그래 그 순이 시기도 똥이 순이 시기 똥이 순이 시기가 대만 집에 된지 똥을 그래 이 시기가 대만 집에 된지 와 그때 솔직히 시작이 있어요. 손에 아니 집에 손에 시기지 동안 또는데 다 손이랑 이쪽에 동안 또는 상도 받이 되고 어디 봐. 아, 기다리면 시험 좋아.
So this profound meaning is not unsuitable to become the objects of any mind whatsoever. It can be determined by means of pure view, and it can be made the object by means of meditation on the pure meaning. Therefore, it is also not an emptiness that cannot be practiced at the time of the path, or one that has nothing to see or realize. So here, this paragraph is going to talk about some people might think that realizing a reflection of a face as realizing reflections as empty of being a face. Some people think that such realization is the realizations of the realizations of non-inherent existence of reflections. However, realizing that reflection is empty of being a face doesn't mean that it is a realization that realizes reflection is empty of inherent existence.
그래도 내가 대시고도 다시 또 벌써는 다 눈이 나서 봤다. 아, 시기지 또 봐, 또 어디 손이 나기 집에 봐. 또 거기서 또 말해서 왔다 그래. 손이 시기지 또 봐, 또 어디 손이 나기 왔다 또 말해. 뭐 이래서 왔다. 손이 시기지 또 봐, 또 어디 손이 나기 집에 또 왔다 또 말이나 수수 쪽에 손이는 시기지 시기도 뭐 봐, 또 와면서 또 수수 쪽에 지역에 손이 시기도 뭐 봐. 무슨 또 그래. 수수 쪽에 손이 나기 집에 또 왔다 말이나 또 와면서 또 말이나 이거 또 어디 봐보자. 이봐. 이거 장이 집에 또 손이 나기 집에 또 와면서 또 쓰나 봐봐 이거 하나 또 뭐니 무슨 또 와. 또 뭐니 또 수수 쪽에 봐봐 차도 무슨 봐봐 이거 그래서 와. 이봐. 확실히 봐봐 세로 들어와. 손이 시기 또 왔다는데 손이 시기도 대반집에 된지 시기는 거 보고 하고. 손이 저도 제일 많이 먹는다. 좀 고다 와서 조사만.
So someone might object, well then, if the ascertainment that mirror reflections and so forth are empty of what they appear to be, were the realizations of their lack of inherent existence, the absence of inherent existence would be realized by the direct reflections of normal beings. So the latter would be Aryas. So realize that reflection is empty of being a face doesn't mean that that person also doesn't mean that that person realizes that the reflection is empty of inherent existence. So you can see the difference, right? Realize that reflection is empty of being a face. So reflections of a face is not a face. So realizing that reflection is empty of being a face doesn't mean that the same person realizes the non-inherent existence of a reflection. So if the realizations of reflections as empty of being a face were the realizations of non-inherent existence of reflection, then since an ordinary beings directly realizes that an ordinary beings realizes that reflection is empty of a face, then it would mean that that ordinary being would realize directly that reflection is empty of inherent existence. Then this ordinary being would become an Arya. So these are the doubts. These are doubts, and then to be negated. Some people think that realizations of reflection that being a faith were the realization. It is the realizations of reflection that's empty of inherent existence. However, it is not. These two realizations is not the same.
어디 들어와. 안다. 손에 장이 집에 손에 시기 또 왔다는데 손이 장이 또 많이나 손에 장이 또 장이 시점이 너무 예스 나도 막 좋았다. 와. 손에 시기 많이 봤다는데 손이 장이 집에 또 왔다 보면 마토나 손에 장이 집에 또 왔다 장이 누구래 예스 나도 진짜 얼마 아니 좋아.
So here is to negate the wrong understanding, right? That mirror reflection is empty of being a face. So realizing that doesn't mean that it is the realizations of their lack of inherent existence. Then again, there are doubts that otherwise, then how could this be a suitable analogies for the absence of inherent existence? So some people think that then if it's not a realizations of non-inherent existence, why reflections is being used as an example for the absence of inherent existence?
어디로 다들 말해 오더래 다간다 뭐 시작하면 데 강도와 다시 잡을만 저런 거지 이거 지기 따고 되는 kunji 따고 돈이 네 지기 돈이 가면 되는 kunji 돈 받으셔 다간다 아다 뭐 지기 rangi 메바 또는 뭐 지기 앞에 가다 시지라로 와 시지라 rangi 메바 또 강이 봐 되게 되게 뭐 kunji rangi 메바 와 지도 했어 봐 지도 했어 이 지도서 와서 뭐我不记让你们到底现在我不怎么让你们都是这些习惯嘛，都是习惯，都土人现在的哇，关键让你们不到啊，我的这个是这个让你们吧啊，让你为你，我点呢，这个不根据让你动，我切切怎么的，大家不是习惯吧？那这个别动把的多的，那现在我不经看看的，那些节目基本上就嘛多，好像那切把记要嘛，现在看看的，真的啊。或者做有个人做多这些，那个就行，哇，当我们手里的嘛，更小的嘛，手里更小，更小的，手里的几个人怎么这么去，怎么这么去就嘛变小的，这种的怎么嘛这么去，就他妈现在不怎么怎么动，哇。
So 400 Sangha says, it is explained that a seer of one thing is a seer of everything. So one thing, or how they this, the emptiness of one thing is the emptiness of all. So one thing or one basis. So it's explained that a seer of one thing is a seer of everything. The emptiness of one thing is the emptiness of all. So here it doesn't mean that when you realize one thing as lack of inherent existence, means that you also realize the lack of inherent existence of all other things. So it doesn't mean that you realize the emptiness of one thing means that you also realize the emptiness of all other things. So it doesn't mean that. What it means is when you realize the emptiness of one thing, then you will be able to realize the emptiness of other things. So realize one thing, then you doesn't mean that you realize everything. So realize one thing means that when you realize one thing, then you will be able to realize the emptiness of other things. So that is what it means. So as I mentioned just now, when you realize the emptiness of one basis, then it will be easier for you to realize the emptiness of other bases or other things or other phenomena.
有的多年个，他听了嘛，点讲嘛，晓得，那习惯的时候呢，习惯的东巴多边呢，是吧？习惯的时候呢，习惯在北方的现在嘛，他整个地方还挺蛮厉害的哇。习惯的时候呢，习惯东巴多边呢，有的那个，这样子呢，这里行起来，行了6个马的时候的，是吧？看到，习惯的东巴多吧，那这个，有的让我让个经济主管这边，电视机有的了，6个是那6个马的，这个6个马的，这6个马，你行是。你是说，你习惯没法动动嘛？这是个，等到多的时候，如呢习惯把这个多给落地个，所呢，然后子女去主管这边这个习惯没法多多个是呢，你多用嘛？也是个，你多多个嘛？你多多个嘛？所呢，然后子女去主管这边，这把得了年波多嘛，得了年波嘛，也是个，是吧？所呢，然后子女主管这边这把的电子了啊，电子了啊。如呢，学习的这边这把的电子嘛了吧？如呢，学习的这边这把叫了，你电子给嘛了吧？你电把电子嘛的，知道？如呢，学习的电把这边电子的，如呢，学习的电把这边电子的，如呢，电把这边电子嘛一些吧？
啊，两个。
如呢，电把这边，如呢，学习的这边这把叫了吧？如呢，电把这个，如呢，学习的电把这个，如呢，学习的电把这家，如呢，电把这边电子上把的是了，如呢。所以你们重要嘛？不是？
两个说了，你那也两个说了，你
对吧？所以学习的这边明白就是吧？那学习的这边明白的，所以学习的点板明白，所以学习的点板这边点板明白的，所以学习的点板这个的， Sune Demba Ziba Reves, the Maries. Sune Demba Ziba Denzi Reves, the Maries. The Maries. Oh, and the Sune Shaki the Demba Ziba Denzi. Sune Shaki the Demba Ziba Denzi Remado. Sune Demba Ziba Denzi Maries. Sune Demba Ziba Denzi Maries. Wow.
苏念切心度金巴的，那个苏念切心，
Demba Ziba.
切心，
Demba Ziba Remado.
电巴的经济哦，苏念切心，苏念切心度电巴经济哦，电巴的经济哦嘞，因为的苏念电巴金巴的嘛的，
Sune Demba Tuba Denzi Maries. Denzi Maries. Let Sune Demba Tuba Denzi Mariba Sonza Sune Shaki the Mariba Tuba no Degi. Sune Demba Denzi like Neo Maries.
蛮尼巴的样个，
Sune Shaki the Mariba Tuba Chua. Sune Demba Denzi the Neo Maries. Nemo Maries. Nemo Maries. Mando Jose Kazana. Oh, Sune Shaki the Mariba Tuba, the Tony to block him. Only to block Hake Mara. Sune Demba Denzi the Nea Lodge Buena. Sati Canada. Only not the Shabura. That the condition of Sune Ranki Matu Tua, they shall not. Sune Ranki Matu Tua, no, they Sune Demba Denzi the nowhere. Oh, Sune Shaki the Matu below, they Sune Demba Denzi the nowhere. Yes.
因为的苏念切心度金巴的，苏念切心度电巴经济哦啦，电巴经济哦啦，电巴经济哦的，因为苏念电巴做金巴嘛的，
Demba Tuba Denzi Maries. Sune Demba Tuba Denzi Maries. Maries. Sune Demba Tuba Denzi is not. That's not
Yeah, so it explains that the seer or realizer of the emptiness of one thing can realize the emptiness of other things. The realization that the reflections of a face is empty of being a face does not in any way damage the objects of one's apprehensions of true existence that apprehends the reflections to be established by way of its intrinsic nature. So without the negation of its object, the emptiness of inherent establishment of the reflection cannot be realized. So the apprehensions of a reflection as being a face, so it is an apprehensions of the reflections as a 切心度点把经历我的，点把经历我的，
Sune Shaki the Demba.
苏念切心，
Sune Shaki the Demba.
啊，
Sune Shaki the Demba Ziggles. Sune Shaki the Demba Ziggles. Sune Demba Ziggles.
苏念切心度的点把经历我咯，点把经历我，点把经历我呢，你呢点进嘛的，
Denzi Maries. Denzi is not. Sune Demba Denzi Maries.
Yeah. So apprehensions of a reflections as being a face is apprehensions of a reflections as being a face, as truly apprehending it. Yeah, did 因此的看的那个人啊，虽然切心度点把经历了话是啦，
Demba Denzi Maries.
点把经历了的，
Sune Shaki the Demba Ziggles. Sune Shaki the Demba Ziggles. Denzi Leves Maries. Denzi Leves Maries.
点把是的那的哦的切心我那的是的，那个拉说，sorry. So apprehensions of reflection as being a face is apprehensions of reflections as being a real face. Yeah. So in English is so apprehensions of reflections as being a face is a apprehension of a reflection as being a real face. But this apprehension, the apprehensions of a reflection as being a face, is not a true apprehension. Is not a true apprehension of a reflections as being a face. Another way of saying this is, it is not an apprehension of a reflections of reflection as being a face as truly existent. Yeah. So I repeat, apprehensions. Apprehensions of a reflection as being a face, it is a reflection of it is an apprehension of reflection as being a real face or being a true face. However, it is not a true apprehension of a reflection as being a face. So true apprehension means that apprehend something as truly existent. So it is not a true apprehension of a reflection as being a face. Since it is not a true apprehension of a reflection as being a face, therefore realizing it as not being a face doesn't help one to realize the non-inherent existence of a reflection. So that's why it says here the realization that the reflections of a face is empty of being a face does not in any way damage the objects of one's apprehensions of true existence that apprehends the reflection to be established by way of its intrinsic nature. So since the apprehensions of a reflections since these apprehensions of a reflections as being a face is not an apprehension of truth, is not an apprehension of true existence, reflections as being a face. So since it is not a true apprehension of a reflections as being a face, therefore realizing it as empty of being a face. So realizing that or that apprehension, that reflection is empty of being a face, doesn't in any way damage the objects of one's apprehensions of true existence that apprehends the reflection to be established by way of its intrinsic nature. So it doesn't damage the objects of one's apprehensions of true existence. So the object is the truly existent reflection. So it doesn't damage at all. So since it doesn't damage at all, so it is not a realization of emptiness of inherent existence.
那么就是多数是不能够知道就能知道，那个几个是从呢，几个东北被落球了啊，几个是从呢的，几个从呢的几个东北都被落球了啊，这几个是从呢，几个东北都被落这个，从呢，让你这个东北都是呢得多个马来是吧？那的，从呢让你这个东北都是得多个马来，从呢让你这个东北都是呢，从呢他们这个电子能回来。 손에 랑 대박 된지를 넣고요. 좋아. 아예 손에 시기지 맞다 시기지 손에 시기지 또 받대 넣어 되게 손에랑 진짜 넣어라 뒤에 넣고 말해서 좋아. 넣고 말 만내비 교재에 가르잖아. 손에 랑이 좀 동아지 동요 말이. 동요 말아. 갖고 손에 랑이 좀 동아 또스나 손에 랑 진짜 기반으로 예를 넣고요. 좋아. 넣고요. 너도들 거기 보니까 다 시기지 손에 시기지 동바코를 뭐 되게 손에 랑이 집에 동바코를 통해서 말해스 또 말해스 그 말도 왔습니다 손에 랑이 집에 야 내가서 너무 돼 와, 되는 말에 손에 랑이 집에 또 딘스텔라 말해야 진짜 가능한가
꼬나 연결 순으로 나기라.
이 시기 손에 시기 동바코 불러 줘라
首先请读
시기 동바코 불러 줘 그 시기 동바코 불러 되게 손에 대마 집에 딘스를 넣고 있어 넣고 말해 와 손에 대마 집에 딘스를 넣고 말해 가르치는 넣고 말해서 손에 대마 집에 딘스를 넣어서나 이랑 집에 동아 꼭 말했어 와 손에 랑이 집에 동아 또 불러 되게 손에 랑 대마 집에 딘스를 넣고 와 와, 내가 눈에 차들어와. 내 손자, 우리 시기도 받으면 너 되게 손에 대면 얘들 너무 말해. 만나면 지르대 그 손에 돈이 또고요 말해. 하나. 손에 돈이 또고요 말해. 좋아. 손에 돈이 또고요 말해. 손에 돈이 또 봐이나 손에 대면 얘들 내고요. 내고요. 어디다 대사래.
Yeah. So in brief is a thought, yeah, a topic, yeah, a thought. So,
저 같은 거 아니지?
do.
시기 손에 시기 또 받더니 또 내가 또 넣어서 제가 그래. 손에 나도 뭐이 딘지를 째안냐고 말해서 좋아. 내가 근데 비교해서 되게 힘이 쓰시면 해봐. 힘이 쓰시면 내서 와도 눈에 딘지 힘이 또 말해서
제유대 대바두베 제신대로.
제유대 눈이 대바두가 들어와. 눈이 대바두가 내가 또 말이에서. 와.
그래서 엔진기 제유대 엔진기 제유네 대바두가 제신로.
요로와. 눈이랑 뭐 두가 딘지 요로와. 가는 신이 가서나 눈이 대바두가 돼.
순이 대바두가 돼.
눈이 대바두가 내가 또 말이. 신이 내가 또 그러 딘지 되기 신이 요 말아. 순위 대바트가 지금 딘지 되기 신이 요래서 요 말아. 신이 수작에서 순위 대바트가 들어와. 요 말아. 때 내가 또 말이에서 순위 내가 딘지 신이 내가 또 말이에서 순위 지기 또 꼬아도 된다. 이게 또 말. 또 왔습니다. 순위 대바트가 우리 두한테 딘지한테 요구 봤어.
Okay. So the realization that the reflections of a face is empty of being a face. So this is one point. So when you realize that reflections of a face is empty of being a face, so does not in any way damage the objects of one's apprehensions of true existence, that apprehends the reflections as inherently existent. So this sentence. So when you realize a reflections of a face is empty of being a face, does not in any way damage the object of one's apprehensions of true existence, that apprehends the reflections as truly existent. So you understand, right? So when you realize reflections of a face is empty of being a face, doesn't mean that you realize the object of one's apprehensions of true existence as a non-inherent existence. So in other way of saying this is, it doesn't in any way damage the objects of one's apprehensions of true existence. So if this realization that the reflections of a face is empty of being a face were the realizations of non-inherent existence of a realizations, then it must damage the objects of one's apprehensions of true existence. So the objects of one's apprehension of true existence is the truly existent reflection. So if this realization were the realizations of non-inherent existence of reflections, then it must damage the object. Since it doesn't damage in any way the object of one's apprehension of true existence, therefore, this realization is not a realization of non-inherent existence or non-truly existent of the object, which is the reflection. Yeah.
이거도 뭐 되게
어쨌든 하고에 주셨으면.
주가도 뭐 이렇게 너네가 그렇게 그렇게 시작이 되게 좋아. 이제 마서와 제가도 기사 마서
내가 진이
제가 좋았다고 제가 근데 내가 자고 있지.
나서. Yeah, so I will stop here, and then it's already 6 p.m. So we don't have time for question and answer. In coming class, I will allocate a question and answer time. So and then if you have any question, then ask.
다리 샤브스 지마다 샤브스 다 지마 샤브다. 그게 다리들 좋아 샤브다. 다 본다 데려와. 근데 마마사바지 이슈로 하고 봤어.
Yeah. So it seems like I was telling lies because in previous class I say that in coming class then I will allocate a question and answer time. So however, again then in this class then we don't allocate any time for question and answer. So it seems like a lie. So I'm sorry. So because I didn't aware that it's already 6 p.m.
Yeah. 그럼 어떻게 데려와. 강아도 이제 원들한테 집게까지 원도와 요 그래서 제가 지금 초보지 비행기 타고 사서 가서 지금 때마다 우리 그래서 이제 말을 쇼를 해서 아가라 거기 가서 때리려고 서버는 거지 좀 무슨 뭐 미야스 좀 있는데 그런 거 지금 좀 최선을 쉬어야 돼. 전에 이제 그거 딱다 마주도 빠니 그거야. 네. 나중에 이거 마주 미야스 파도야. 무엇이 내가 tapado ideia nani tudo ideia o tudo que vai ter te kanda dejes kanda me neba nyamba doa nyamba bala roba chini tam pada mesha bala pindu tu roba chini kan ko sama ba seri ni deji kusu so beto to san ki mo ban ni per maybe she for better matches.
Yeah. So we conclude this session with dedication. We dedicate the roots of virtue to Buddha. We conclude these dedications with We conclude these sessions with dedication. We dedicate these roots of virtue to Buddha's teachings and sentient beings in general. And we also dedicate these roots of virtue to all upholders of Buddha's teaching, mainly His Holiness the Dalai Lama, to live eons long, have excellent health, and may all their enlightened activities and holy wishes be accomplished instantaneously and be spread in all 10 directions. And we also dedicate these roots of virtue to our beloved teacher, Gabriel Lama Rinpoche. We dedicate this for our beloved teacher, Gabriel Lama Rinpoche. May Rinpoche be swiftly, may the unmistaken reincarnations of Rinpoche be swiftly returned and continue to attend the real Dharma for the sake of sentient beings and the teaching, so that we will have the opportunity to receive the precious teaching from you again, Rinpoche. And we also dedicate these roots of virtue to the world peace. May excellent happiness prevail in the world. May wars, conflicts, disaster, natural disaster, pandemic, and etc. be pacified immediately. And we also dedicate these roots of virtue to those who pass away. May all their negativities be pacified immediately and quickly achieve the state of enlightenment. We also dedicate these roots of virtue to those who help others, such as doctors, nurses, and those who help others financially. So may they live long, good health, and may all their good wishes be accomplished instantaneously. Begewadi tendang ruwa kun la kan bendang kiba jizun lo zang dawa yi tenpe nimbo rindo se je shu sencho rinpo je ma ki panang ki kyu ji ki ba nyamba me ba yang ko ne kondo penwa shu jampe pa we ji da ken ba dang sambo de yang de shin de da kun de je su da lo je ki wa ni da dam je rap tu ko dawa rinpo je ma ki panang ki kyu ji ki ba nyamba me ba yang ko ne kondo penwa shu ri dawa rinpo je ma ki panang ki kyu ji nyamba me ba yang ko ne kondo penwa shu Ye sun do ju bie lang qi zhe zi zi kan jie jian dui gun qian na bei mu dian xin ge zu la su wo de su xian de lu du zhu ni de bian de ma lu ba kan de zhong wei sang bei xin nu kan de zu me dian xin ge zu la su wo de su du xie lu du zhu ni ma jian se ye rang zu lo sang ge hua ye si ge hua ji rang jian xi ge jia yu ma lu bei de bei bu ba du bei ge le zu yong su zu bei zu jian ri bu de xie dang du bei zhen zhen bei wa la na yan bi xin zu bei guo jia xian zi la ma su wa de bian de ma de yong wei guo ji fu ge wei de dang ma ge du wa yi de na ji就把这边不能不喜欢西的一点帮为当去做感受进拉当，给都给老婆接路费的培养出啥辈中给上都接辈都有些说。我为新港的平常的我马都成为的接着是往电竞要做一下别世界把都登录进。Kisila Kamachi, Konda, Kisila Kamachi, Kamachi. Yeah, so to put it in a simple way is, how to just now I didn't translate, how to in simple enough. So basically, when you realize reflections of a face, when you realize that reflections of a face is not a face, doesn't mean that you realize the non-inherent existence of the reflections of a face. So this is the summary which I mentioned just now. When you realize the reflections of a face is empty of being a face, in other words, is reflections of a face is not a real face, it doesn't mean that you realize the non-inherent existence of the reflections of a face. So this is the summary. Thank you. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gisela.
Okay, thank you,
Gisela.
Gisela.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Geshe-la. Thank you, Ken.
Gisela, thank you, Ken.
And I'm going to
Gisela.
Gisela says good night.
Ken.
Simply.
Ken.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night. Good night.
Thank you, Ken.
Enjoy your dinner, Gisela. Gisela.